Hello, Junk Journal Adventure Club. Welcome to step one of making your very own junk journal. Step one is making your cover. This part alone, just getting started, can be so overwhelming because look at the variety that you have to choose from. I'm going to show you some ideas here, and you make your own decision as to what you want for your cover. But we are going to start with what I think is the simplest cover, the most basic cover, and then you can develop your skills from there. I think that that's the easiest way to not feel overwhelmed. So all of your options here. Let me just go through some. This is just a small stack of what I have available for me as I make journals. I make a lot of covers and keep them in a stack so when I'm ready to make a journal, I pull them out. I think one of the easiest ones to do is to make a junk journal from a file folder. You can make the covers out of just about any material that you think is pretty or will look nice. So this is just made out of a file folder, and then I folded the side of the file folder over, and that makes a nice little pocket. You can use fabric for your covers. So the whole thing is just nice and soft and squishy. I haven't completed this one yet, but this is completely made out of fabric. And I do have or plan on having tutorials for all of these different styles eventually on my YouTube. Some of them are already there, some of them are over in my Patreon. This is one that I made from these. This is actually an antique candy box that I found at an estate sale. And you can see there, Apollo chocolates. Totally cool. But it was just the cover and then a dilapidated box. But I loved the cover, so I actually made a spine and made a back, which I can now decorate to kind of match the front. And now I have this gorgeous cover. So you can use all kinds of things like candy box covers. This is now you also want to decide, do you want a soft spine? Or do you want a rigid spine like this? It obviously gives it a much different look. And do you want to sew your signatures through the spine so that they show, or do you want them hidden? Those are decisions that you need to make, and we will make later when I'm actually doing the tutorial. These 2 pages were from my Happy Planner from, was it 2022 in the middle of the lockdown? I didn't have any happy things to plan for that 2 years, so my planner was completely empty. And I do have a tutorial on how I made this. So I just used pages from the planner that I really liked and made this soft cover. And one of my favorite methods is just using old books. And that's what we're actually going to do today because I think it's the easiest way to start. But this is a beautiful cover from an old pocket thesaurus, and I removed the guts and reinforced it, and I'm going to make a lovely journal out of that. And it's okay if you have come across an old book with no spine, or it's so damaged that it's all falling apart. Quite often you can get a really good bargain on these because they're falling apart, they have no spine, and you can go to the seller and say, look, the cover's not even attached. They don't know that you're going to be able to reattach it, right? So just make it out like, oh, this book is just a shambles. Would you take X amount of dollars for it? And so you can totally, look at how pretty, you can totally make a spine for these kinds of antique books. this one was totally made out of chipboard. I made the whole spine and front and back cover myself, and I covered it with wallpaper from my shop. I guess maybe it goes this way. I don't know. Does it matter? And these are lovely and easy and inexpensive to make. So you can make your own if you have chipboard, cereal boxes, the covers from paper packs, the front and back covers, those are wonderful. So use whatever you have on hand and you can make your own too. And you can, so this one's covered with wallpaper. This one is covered with muslin that I painted and sanded down and distressed. And this is actually an old book cover, but the content was not very interesting. The cover was not very interesting, so I covered it. But the structure of the book itself was pretty good. The spine is still intact, so I covered it with fabric. And then what about just this is just what about just scrapbook paper or wallpaper? Now I personally prefer wallpaper because your spine is, if you use just scrapbook paper and you don't reinforce your spine, it's eventually going to split and crack, and it can't take the wear and tear on the spine like wallpaper can. Wallpaper is pretty indestructible, but this is just two pieces of wallpaper glued together and folded in half, and there's, you stick some pages in there and you've got a journal. So it doesn't have to be complicated, guys, but I think what becomes overwhelming is the number of options, and you might be saying to yourself, where do I start? So today, for step 1 of our adventure, we're going to grab ourselves a book that we already have on hand. You might have something, it doesn't even have to be something pretty like this. Just grab a hardcover book, and I'm going to show you how to make a journal cover from it. So decide how sturdy you want your cover to be when you're going through all these choices. What kind of spine do you want? Do you want a hard or a soft spine? And what do you want on your cover? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to have fabric like these two? Or do you want to cover it with something? Those are all decisions to be made. But again, if you just pick an old book and you like the cover, we'll get started with that. So here's the book that I chose for today. I've been wanting to make a masculine journal for quite some time. I have a really grungy digital kit coming out soon that's really very masculine, and I want to use it, and so I'm going to put it in this book. I love this dapper gentleman on the front. This is a book about old age. It's cause and prevention, and some of the advice is pretty funny, but yeah, it's not a book I'm ever going to read. And you can see that I got this for $1.50 at the antique store, so it was a bargain. So for this particular book, it does have a spine that's a little damaged. This is a hollow back spine, so you can see that the signatures are not attached to the spine. This is an easier book to take apart. If you have a book where it's actually glued to the spine like this, it's going to take a little more work with your X-Acto knife, but if you're really careful, you'll be able to remove all of the signatures. So the first thing we want to do is open it up, and you see first here you have your end pages. Your end pages where this one is attached. This is actually one sheet, and then typically there will be another sheet glued to it. In this case, there's several old photos that I'll definitely keep. And then we start with the binding. So if you're using an old book, you're not going to be able to salvage this and keep it all together, because we're going to be covering part of this. So you want to find the edge of your book here, and you just carefully take your X-Acto knife. This one's going to be super easy to take apart. They're usually not this easy, but yeah, this one's fallen apart really easily, but you can see in there where they have sewn. I hope you can see where they've sewn the threads. This is their binding, and sometimes you do have to cut right through that, cut through the threads. This one was already falling apart, and this is coming off very easily on this one. I think I have another video you can look through where I'm doing this on a book that's a little harder to take apart if you're having trouble with one. Let's cut through these strings. Okay, and this whole, all of these signatures look like they're just going to come right out. Whoa, I didn't even have to cut that one. So that was really easy. It's usually not that easy. Oh, what's this that fell out? A little, that's cute, a little domino sugar packet with a beaver and a birch tree. Totally keeping that. That's fun. I am keeping that to craft with. So we have a little bit more here. We don't want this on here, this, because it's just a little too messy. We need to be able to have the spine be relatively clean because we're going to be applying glue. And I think I'm going to take this and go from the back here. Be really careful to not cut through your spine if at all possible. If you do, it's okay. It can be remedied. And of course, we're going to keep all of the pages. If you have a newer book, keep your pages because you might be able to cut out some little sentiments like this, things to be remembered. You know, there's always things that you can cut out of the books and use. So even if they're not vintage pages, there might be some goodies in there, some images that you can use. And believe it or not, I am keeping this because this is really cool and it could just be, let me find a page, you know, it's just a really neat collage element. Some of your books will also have the headbands that are still at the top and bottom of the book, and I cut those off and I reuse them. So if you have some cool headbands, definitely keep those. And you know, look at how it just dresses it up. So you want to get this nice and clean, and there's actually more paper in here that I'm just going to clean out as much as I can. I'm not going to save this. Just clean it up as much as you can because we want to be able to glue on here. And some people say, oh, you're ruining old books. Well, you definitely want to check to make sure that it's not a valuable book before you start pulling it apart. And in my mind, this is a book that probably nobody's going to read these days. It's a very outdated topic, but it has a beautiful cover. And so we're preserving it just in a different form, right? We're repurposing and making sure that this beautiful book is loved just in a different format. That's the way I look at it. But there are some books in my collection that I have not been able to cut apart. And I just put them on my shelf and they look pretty. And they make me happy that way. This end paper is kind of coming off. This book is just really falling apart. So I think I'll just clean up as much as you just don't want any loose loose ends. It's okay if it looks like this and it looks messy. That's perfectly okay, but I don't want this kind of stuff. I think I'll just peel it off a little bit. I know this is very boring to watch right now, but hopefully you're crafting along with me and taking apart your own book, and we're doing this together. And the beauty of video is you can pause it anytime and come back to it. All right, I think that's cleaned up sufficiently. Okay. So now we need to reinforce this. So this is tearing at the bottom, I can see, and it's about to come off of the covers. It's not strong at all. So we want to just give this a little bit of a reinforcement. So most of the people that are participating in the Adventure Club are members of my Facebook group, Junk Journals on a Budget. So we are keeping this whole project on a budget. And I'm going to actually, I think it would be kind of fun for me to track how much it cost me to make this book. So far, the book cover was $2. Okay? That'll be fun. See how much it costs us at the end. And I'd love for you to keep track, and we'll post at the end who was able to make their book for the cheapest. That'd be kind of fun. Well, in that vein of keeping things at a budget, I save anytime I receive a package. I save the Tyvek envelope, and I just have them in this priority mail envelope because I use these for my shop for shipping. Now, do not go to the post office. These are free, but it's against the law to go to the post office and just grab a bunch of these, okay? So just save them from when you get mail. And you can also buy these at Staples and places like that. But if you don't have any Tyvek on hand, you can use duct tape. Okay? So you could just tape here in the same spot where I'm going to put the Tyvek. So let me see if I even have a piece that's good. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right, so we're going to cut this down. And what you want to do is have it be just a little teeny weeny bit shorter than the length of your spine, because you only want it to come up to about where the pages would be. You want to leave, that's maybe 1/8 of an inch, or yeah. So for my book, I'm going to measure this page, this end page, and that is exactly 7.5, so that's easy. This stuff is difficult to cut in a paper trimmer. I'm going to give it a try, but sometimes it doesn't go through, and I have to use my rotary wheel, which is fine, my rotary cutter. Went through that time. And I save all these little pieces because you never know, when you might need to reinforce something, and these all open up, so I save them. So for the width, you want the width of your spine, but you want to have 1 inch on either side of your spine. We're reinforcing the spine here. So for me, that's going to be 3 inches. Little over 3 inches, like 3.25 inches wide. So make sure you have 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on this side plus the width of your spine. So what did I say for me? 3 1/4. This is when it gets really hard to cut. It's when you have two, when it's doubled up, it seems to do better, but I bet this is not going to cut. We'll see. Actually, sometimes if you turn it the other way. Nope. See, it just pushes it down. So I'll show you the other way to cut it. Just have my ruler and my rotary cutter and just trim it up. There we go. And you will see as I go along that I'm very organized. It annoys some people. Yes, I know. But I really believe in staying organized. So this is all going back. This is going right back where it belongs right now. I just find it to be more fun when I have a clean workspace. So, okay. Let me just take a little paintbrush, or my brush here, and just clean this up even more before I glue it down. This is just a little crafting brush, a texture brush that I bought way back in the 80s for doing cards, card making. Let me get all that stuff off my desk so it doesn't end up in my glue. And let me grab some glues and we'll talk about glue for a second. So the best glue to use for reinforcing your spine is going to be any type of PVA glue. PVA glue, polyvinyl acetate, I think is what it stands for, I can't remember, is basically just wet glue. Glue that's water-based. So there's all kinds of brands out there. You can go as expensive as actual bookbinders PVA, and but this is going to be more expensive. Mod Podge is considered to be a PVA because see, it's water-based, so you can use Mod Podge. For this, I would recommend the matte, not the glossy. And just regular old Elmer's glue is PVA. You know, the stuff you used in school. I like Aleene's tacky glue for a lot of things. And the reason why PVA glue is so important in bookmaking is because it works well on paper, which is porous. So the PVA is going to sink into your papers and give you a really good adhesion. So for today, I'm just going to use the Mod Podge because that's probably what most of you have on hand. And I'll put my mat under here so I don't get glue all over my cutting mat. And I just have a soft bristle brush that I got really inexpensively either at Hobby Lobby or the dollar store, not sure. And normally I get myself a little cup to put and pour the glue in it, but I didn't grab something before I came into the studio, and I'm too lazy to go get one. So I'm just going to start in the spine here. Make sure I have really good coverage. And I am going to go down to the bottom, even though my piece is not going to go, because that's just going to help reinforce it and help keep it from fraying. And I do the spine and just the edge first. And I try not to have very many clumps. And I'm going to put that down. and just really get it in there first before I glue down the rest. I just find you get better glue coverage when you do it this way. And use my bone folder to make sure that's on there really nicely. Okay, that looks good. And now I'll just glue the flaps down. And it's okay if you get glue past where your reinforcement is going to be. Make sure you get down on the crack there, because we're going to have to put an end paper on here. There, I've got some dirt from the book. And check for lumps. I remember when I started my first junk journal, I just binge watched all these different channels, and I was so overwhelmed because I just didn't know where to start. And so that was one of my main reasons for starting this little challenge, is I wanted to do a step-by-step, but a step-by-step where people can ask questions and we can engage with each other. So I'm really excited with all of you that have responded to this. Thank you so much. It makes it more fun for me when there's people that are excited about their projects. Okay, and let me just, there's a little glue that came out there. And that's all there is to it, to reinforcing your spine. So now that is not going anywhere. Oops, I have glue that squeezed through here. Let me get a little. That was a very delicate spine, I guess. It was about to come off in some areas. It was about to tear. It's not gonna now. And later on, if you don't like the look of this spine, you can decorate it. Okay, so that is the step number 1 in making your own junk journal. Post any questions down below or over on the free Patreon membership that I've started for the Junk Journal Adventures Club, or over in the Junk Journals on a Budget Facebook group. There's all kinds of ways that we can interact and share our projects and ask questions. I will try to answer every single question that comes through. I want to guide you through this process, and post some pictures of your book cover. That would be fun too. All right, I will see you in step 2. Bye.